Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. This is part 2 of our 2-part series on African ritual and initiation. With me is Malidoma Patrice Some, who is a shaman of the Dagara people from the country of Bakiri Faso in West Africa, formerly known as Upper Volta. Malidoma is the author of several books, including Ritual, Power Healing and Community, and Of Water and the Spirit. He possesses 2 doctoral degrees from the Sorbonne and from Brandeis University in political science and in literature. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Malidoma. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to be here too.
We talked a bit in part 1 of this program of the ritual traditions and the magical traditions of your people, the Dagara people in Africa. Your experience of these traditions though is much more personal than we described in there, because you've actually received the initiation into many of these rites and rituals.
That's correct.
And I think in this part of our program we'll go into those experiences, which as far as I know are not often told or spoken of.
No. That's simply because of again, the importance of secrecy that surrounds most African rituals. First of all, because ritual is the kind of life force that links the living and the spirit world together. And so 70 to 90% of the time of most of the people in the village is spent either recovering from ritual, designing a ritual, or doing a ritual. And the key ritual that everybody in the village has to go through is what you referred to earlier as initiation, which in the village, by the way, is referred to as remembering, and sometimes also as knowledge. What is it? It is primarily something that is designed to help a person who has forgotten the reason of his or her existence in the village, to get the chance to reconnect with that purpose in order to be qualified for adulthood. And usually the way it happens is it starts first with the council of the initiation preceding the candidate, who at that time is usually in his or her teens. These elders precede them to the jungle, the bush, and await them to be delivered by the village. And the village accompanies these people to the outskirts and take their clothes off and surrender them to the bush and to the council of initiation. So what that means is that in order to acquire knowledge, one must return into the womb of nature, just the same as one looked when one came into the earth. For the next 6 weeks at the most, whatever happened is designed and directly focused around the business of bringing one face to face with one's purpose, the kind of purpose that qualified one to become a human person. See? And I still remember these extremely difficult exercises that I had to be put through, because at that time I was 7 years older than the oldest kid that was there. There were 64 of us. And because 7 years ago, prior to that, those of my age had already gone through their own initiation, and I was not in the village to actually participate in that.
You had been at a missionary school.
That's correct. And I was busy, as I say, being initiated into the white man's way, into modernism. So I returned into the village, fully literate, able to think and be analytical, and so on and so forth. So what happened is that I discovered at that time the intrusive, the difficulty actually of the mind, that the mind put the body through. When you enter into this kind of ritual space, prepared more to analyze, to expect certain things,
Yes.
and to eventually want to know ahead of time what is going to happen prior to actually getting involved with it. So at first, one of the things that broke that pattern off from me was an exercise that was designed to enlarge our visual horizon. It consisted simply in just sitting 20 feet away from a certain tree that we've picked and to start gazing at that tree.
Yes.
Though it took about between 8 and 10 hours for the normal child to go through it took me 37 hours.
37 hours of staring at a tree.
At a tree. Well, the truth was that I was having great difficulty concentrating my attention to the tree, simply because, in 110-degree temperature, you sit naked on the gravel that is very hot. You begin to perspire, and at the same time, there are ants crawling on your back, having taken serious interest in you, begin to drill into your body for whatever food they can find. It's a serious dent in your ability to pay attention to what you're supposed to do. I realized that I was giving too much of my energetic attention to those things, or to those bodily phenomena, than to the tree. And so the day went by without my being able to do anything, and the elders who gathered around me on that issue were beginning to argue on my case. Some of them saying very explicitly that, well, they were right in opposing my initiation, because here I am trailing behind, not able to actually successfully do the first exercise. Whatever happened to me in the end was a result of eventually my experience of shame and my realization that, in fact, I had been busier taking care of things that had nothing to do with the very thing that I was supposed to be concerned with.
In reading your book of Water and the Spirit, and your description of this, I thought it was maybe the most significant breakthrough in the whole initiation process.
I give great attention to it because it was indeed the most significant one, because that's the one that broke my own resistance down.
Yes.
What happened, if I may put it that way, was that all of a sudden the tree stopped to be a tree. One could argue that, well, I was hallucinating or under such a stress that...
Well, let's go back, because even before then, you, as I recall, you thought you would fool the village elders by making up a story.
Well, that's true. That's true. I started imagining, and that was just a pure mental practice. I imagined that these people indeed expected me to see something. And so I figured that if I would cook up something, then that would take care of it. So when the elder who was in charge of me asked, "Do you see anything yet?" Well, I said, "I see an antelope standing on its hind legs." So his eyes narrowed, and he looked at me more seriously. And then he said, "Really?" That's when I noticed that maybe I'd said something wrong. And then he said, "Keep looking." Of course, it came to me as a shock to notice that my trick didn't work. It was this and other thing that built inside myself into the form of shame, because I realized that I was being caught. I was being caught doing something other than what I was expected to do. I was being caught lying. So indeed, one thing adds to another, and therefore, in the end, I found out that, gee, something else was beginning to happen.
It struck me that you were caught in a stance, which is very typical of the Western mentality, too, of thinking, this is just a fantasy game.
Well, that's true. In a lot of ways, that's what it felt to me like.
Yeah.
I mean, I was being told that by going through initiation, I was going to be able to be accepted by the village, and I was going to be just one of them. But I wasn't told that I was going to be doing something as silly, to use the term, as silly as this. Because it felt to me that, this tree ain't going to change. It's not going to become something else. And if the elders do really want it to become something else, I might as well tell them anything that comes to mind,
Yeah.
which I did. I mean, this is a result of a well-analyzed process, of a well-thought-out process. So it demonstrates, if anything at all, that I was thinking. I mean, I was mentally present. I was not perhaps very emotionally there or
Yeah.
something. And so the issue was indeed about breaking that mind.
Yes.
Breaking that mind and allowing the emotional self to take over. And that's the thing that finally, this sudden disclosure and expansion of my visual horizon provided the opportunity to have.
And then what happened?
What happened? Gee, the tree stopped to be a tree. A green lady came out there looking like some of those figures in Egyptian drawing of people kind of very square, with an outfit that was so majestic that all of a sudden something in me got stirred up, and I found myself rushing toward that green person as if it was a long-awaited encounter that was finally culminating into this. And I found myself into her arm, sobbing like a little child, but feeling tremendously a sense of home. I had finally arrived home. I don't know how long I happened to be there. And I'm not even going to go into disclosing what she told me. But what happened is that it became clear that she had to go and I had to go. That's a part that was the bitter side of this sweet taste that I had experienced. And so I clung harder on her because of the sudden realization that I could not endure sudden separation after this long-awaited encounter. Not long-awaited because I had sat there for 37 hours for this thing, but it's like something that spanned lifetime after lifetime.
There was a beloved quality.
That's right. A homecoming that made me feel like I was on the right laps. I was on the right hand. And the kind of peace and security and protection and love that I felt was something that I never remembered having before, and something that nothing has ever matched after that.
One might call it a direct encounter with the world of the ancestors.
That's exactly what it would be like. It's an entry into the realm of the ancestral domain, and that means eventually experiencing a little bit of the kind of loving intensity that is common in this kind of realm, which is a reason why respect and connection with the ancestors is so much a part of the day-to-day life of the Dagara person. Then, indeed, of course, a person like me who had finally been open to a situation like this didn't want it to end, but eventually it had to end because all of a sudden I felt that the woman that I was clinging to, her soft body had become kind of rugged. And it was at that time that I raised my head up to try to look at her face to find out what's going on. And that's when I discovered that I was just hugging the tree. I was just clinging harder and harder onto the tree. And all of a sudden at that moment I started to hear the voices of the elders behind me. And one of them were making the comment that, well, they're always like this. First, they don't want to get into it. And when they do get into it, they don't want to get out of it either. But you see, the thing that really touched me, the change that I felt at that moment, as if it had taken hold of me forever, was the realization that the tree has in itself something other than that which we see. And cutting a tree is more like murdering something, or taking a life force away that could give us an opportunity to feel a good sense of home.
My sense is that after that experience, your whole vision of things changed.
Well, that's true. I've begun to be extremely careful about what I see. And I've begun to realize the all-pervasive life force surrounding any kind of living form. And I started realizing that the smallest plant carried in itself a certain life force, which I could not exactly describe or define, but I could see it at least. And seeing was like having a picture in association with a word, and it spoke by itself. The picture spoke by itself.
You described how when you returned back into the forest, every tiny little bug or spider became magnified in your vision.
It was such an enhanced vision that I later on called it hyperbolic perception.
Hyperbolic perception, yes.
Because of the fact that the tiny had become so big that it made no difference whether there were anything small or big at all. In other words, it looked as if the small or the big is a matter of perception. It's not a fixed situation that is unchangeable no matter what. You see.
And this experience was just the beginning of a rather lengthy and complex initiation process. I'm sure we can't begin to describe it all, but I guess it would be fair to say that the doorway between the world of the tribe and this world that we are in now and the world of the spirits of the ancestors became open to you in many different ways.
And that's what I would like to refer to as magical, extremely magical, because I had never seen that before. I'd never seen that in my 16 years of education was in the hand of the Jesuit. And so coming back into the tribe and relearning and facing up to these sequences of magical occurrences and their consequences on my physical, emotional, and mental self was an extremely, extremely massive energetic transformation for me. So, of course, those sequences of magical experience, which became a convincing argument of the thin veil that separates the village world and the countless other worlds that are roaming around us, was to me one of the most obvious and convincing tool of understanding the expansive nature of the cosmos that we live in. The fact that there are countless realities and dimension. This is actually the word I wanted to use. Countless dimension that we can journey in and out from.
And you have, especially during the initiation process, and I assume subsequently, you have journeyed extensively in these other realms.
Absolutely. That's why also the initiation is also likened to a journey. I remember you to jump into this world without any foreknowledge of what is going to happen or what it's going to look like. And entering such a world and realizing the tremendous dynamic of energy at play in there, as if the life force there is so active and so powerful that it feels as if this is the reason, this is the kind of fuel station for the dynamics that we see in this side of reality. Or walking inside a cave and realizing in the end that there's a light hole there and thinking that it's the other side of the hill, and discovering all of a sudden that it is not. It opens up to another world in which it is impossible to think, to question. It is only possible to just suspend everything about yourself as a way to hear the vibration or the language that world speaks. The memory I can never forget was walking across this river on top of alligators that had lined themselves one next to the other so as to constitute something like a bridge. Of course, a bridge slightly underwater, but nonetheless a bridge. Realizing all of a sudden that when I looked down that my foot was between the two eyes of one of them, and yet not feeling scared, but which led me to the understanding of why in every family has what they call a totem.
Yes.
And finding out that, yes, that's the reason why my family totem is a crocodile. You see.
And I assume that even though you possess a doctoral degree in literature, that you don't regard these experiences as being mere metaphorical excursions.
I can't. I've tried whichever way I could to just simply dismiss them as part of a vast symbolic realm that is undecipherable as of yet, you know, to be kind of nice to them. But I've realized that every attempt at seeing them under another angle other than the one that I was shown is very damaging to my sense of identity or my sense of groundedness. And I know that having not taken any kind of aids or drug aids to experience that, that there is no way I can tell that this did not happen. And the fact that I still use those means or that experience in order to walk on a day-to-day basis in this life, in order to do what I'm here to do, is a continual daily reinforcement of the power of that memory, of the power of those magical events upon the quality of my life.
You used the word dimensions earlier, and I gather by that you mean to say that these experiences in the realm of the spirits, in the realm of the ancestors, took place in other dimensions that are as real as the dimension in which we experience each other through our external senses.
Oh, absolutely. This initiation wouldn't have had its magical force, such as that which I saw and experienced, was it happening all in this world. And the good in it, when I say dimension, I refer to this other reality, or this other geographic space that looked pretty much like here sometime, but is completely vibrationally different. And the manner in which the physical self responds to that specific geography. I'm also referring to places that have no resemblance whatsoever to the realm we're in, and nonetheless contain a dynamic of an unsurpassed intensity.
You talked about the life force in one of these spaces, and as I recall, you traveled in that space sort of as an energy being.
That's right. Simply because for some reason it felt like entrance into that place vaporized the physical body, and yet they did not take away the essential life force that I possessed. The way that happened was that I would try to look at part of my body, like my hand. I wouldn't see it. Yet I would take one hand and it would be able to grab the other hand. So that led to the understanding that I'm still here, but I'm unavailable to my own sight. And indeed, all I see around me are a duplicate of tremendous power surging from a source I couldn't identify, but it felt like the sun, even though I could stare right into it without being hurt. And all of that light force was pumping through, going upward. To say that I was in another space was not enough. I would say I was caught in the exact vortex of the cosmos, pulsating in the rhythm of the cosmos itself. And that's probably why I did not need an exact specific configuration detachable from all that was happening around. You know.
I think it's also fair for people to understand that in your experience, these are not simple kinds of initiations. In fact, they're very dangerous. Not everybody survives.
Oh, that's right. That's a part, of course, which shows the fact that flirting around with this dimension can have a lethal consequence.
This is not just playing with fantasy.
That's right. It's not. I remember watching one child disappear into that realm and coming out looking like jelly bean. When he fell on the ground, he just splashed. And of course, knowing that I was going to go into a place after seeing this was not very, very settling to me. But I realized, of course, that Tishta's initiation, it's a one-way journey. You cannot back away once you've entered it. That same day again, I witnessed a situation in which an attempt at retrieving someone who has entered this dimension failed. And I've always asked the question, where is that person? Where is that person? Because apparently, from what the elders say, he's not dead. He's not gone. But to find out which dimension exactly he's locked into is an extremely difficult task. The elders did try to tap into a dimension, but they didn't find him there. They tried again. They couldn't find him. So they ordered that the whole ceremony, the whole session continued.
Yes.
So we're dealing here with a situation that is dangerous as well as completely involving, to the point where you cannot leave part of yourself somewhere while the other part is going into it. There's a total participation in the dynamic that is going on.
A total commitment.
Commitment, that's right. As if one has first to admit to the fact that death has to happen, if it has to happen. Because there's no time or energy devoted to being suspicious or to being self-protective. One has to just surrender, let go of any form of resistance, and allow oneself to go through the whole process.
It's a very powerful and very moving experience, and I think many of our viewers and listeners are going to feel quite confused now as to what this is, because it's so alien to the Western mindset. I can only say that for myself, I'm very touched by the emotional power and the sincerity with which you've described it.
Thank you. It is indeed extremely powerful and very hard to describe, because those reality did not happen in English. And so as a result, of course, I'm doing negotiation, and I don't know how best to present it in such a way that it is
Well, you've done a beautiful job, Malidoma Patrice Some. It's been just a joy and a very enriching experience for you to share with us as the representative of the Dagara people. I've learned so much. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you, too. Thank you for having me here.
And thank you for being with us.